presented 2 memos and had them approved. The first one is from JAM, and it is for the consultancy services agreement with Seedmark Technologies for the upgrade of the portal on which JAM records the candidates. Actually, what we were looking for was the approval for the rates, because in 2021, in 2022, there were 352,280,600 candidates. The amount was 352,280,600 for 1,761,403 candidates. And that is actually the number, but for 2023, 2024, we don't know. The rate is 200, so it could be much higher than this. So that's what we approve for JAM. And then there is the memo on national language policy, which has been approved. So Nigeria now has a national language policy, and you will get the details later from the ministry. The policy document is here, and if I will have to tell you one highlight is in it, government has agreed now instruction in primary school, the first 6 years will be in the mother tongue. In principle, it has been agreed, but I know implementing it will require a lot of work to develop the material, to teach and get the teachers and so on. But the policy has been approved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's okay. Hello? Yeah. Mother tongue is mother tongue. There are 625 languages in Nigeria. If we had the material, let's say instructional material and teachers, this will be used to teach, the community will teach children in its own language. It's not restricted to the 3 languages that were promoted, Hausa, Igbo, English, Yoruba. Mother tongue is mother tongue. So when the policy is fully operational, each locality will teach students in primary 1 up to 6 in their own mother tongue, because research has shown that pupils learn much, much better when instruction is in their mother tongue at that level. But even at that time, while they're getting instruction in their mother tongue, they will be taught other Nigerian languages of their choice, and then they will be taught the international languages at certain stage, English, French, Arabic, and so on. So mother tongue is mother tongue. Don't think when we say mother tongue, it means people will be taught in Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo only. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished members of the press. The Office of the Attorney General presented a council memo this afternoon, and it is for the engagement of consultancy firm for the development and deployment of the federal government contracts administration system for ministries, departments, and agencies of government, and digitization of the process of solicitors department. By way of historical antecedents, we are all aware of key incidences that happened as it relates to contract administration in Nigeria. One of them that is fresh in our memory is the P&ID, on account of which the federal government was by arbitral award subjected to a liability of over $10 billion on account of deficiency in the contract, and which translated to a high risk. We are equally aware of the global steel contract relating to Ajakuta, the defect of which contract subjected to the federal government to higher risk and indeed stagnated our development towards industrialization on account of the fact that for over 2 decades, Ajakuta could not perform arising from the litigation. We are equally aware of similar contracts relating to Sunrise, on account of which litigation our dream to have Mambila could not proceed on account of litigations relating thereto. So now, the federal government has been subjected to series of defective contracts, higher risk contracts, that exposed the federal government to not only litigation, but to enormous monetary damages, which indeed affected our development as a nation. So a decision is taken as to how best we could address those deficiencies associated with contracts that exposed our nation to higher risk and damages. So this memo is intended to now bring about new development in the contract administration by way of deployment of technology, building capacity and specialization, developing a continuous checklist of the existing contracts, and ensuring that the interest of the federal government in whichever contract is to be considered by ministries, departments, and agencies of government is adequately addressed, and at the end of the day, try to the barest minimum to ensure that the federal government is not subjected to higher risk as it relates to damages, as it relates to deficiencies in contracts that it may eventually end up signing with third parties. So the federal government, the Federal Executive Council considered the memo presented by the Office of the Attorney General and eventually granted approval for the engagement of a consultancy service firm that will now assist in the deployment of technology, in building specialization, in developing checklists, building the capacity of the relevant departments in the Federal Ministry of Justice that are responsible for working and providing technical services in the formulation of the contracts, and to ensure at the end of the day going forward that necessary clauses, necessary protection is accorded the federal government in the art of drafting the agreement, in the art of ensuring that necessary checklist is developed that will guide the drafting of the agreement, and then reducing to the barest minimum the level of discretions being factored by the officers in the justice sector in the art of drafting the agreement, so as to deploy the necessary technological component support for what we are doing and reducing to the barest minimum the discretion. So that was what the contract is about, and at the end of the day, the council approved the contract in the sum of 630,132,750 naira, inclusive of the 7.5% value-added tax, with a completion period of 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues and media representatives here present. The memo that we brought, that is the Federal Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, the memo brought before the Council earlier today, is to seek the Council's approval for public-private partnership on research and development of satellite technology and equipment for the provision of cost-effective satellite broadband service to the rural area and the underserved communities in our country. And of course, it's at no cost to government, because it's an unsolicited project that we are approached by a private company, and taking the whole process through the due process, we felt it was time that we brought the whole thing before the Federal Executive Council. And essentially, is to provide very cheap, reliable, affordable, high internet, high-speed fixed broadband to particularly the rural areas. If you will recall that at the moment, the broadband penetration is very, very low, abysmally low. And we need to increase that so that we can reach the underserved and, of course, particularly in the rural areas. And it's through one of our agencies, that's NASDA, National Space Research and Development Agency. And the concession period for the various types of PPP arrangement, and of course the one we decided to key upon is design, finance, build, operate, and transfer. And taking the due process, like I said, you know, we have the ICRC, which is the agency that is responsible for the assessment, and of course, starting from the outline business case, and then you move on to the full business case. And after going to, of course, also seeking the necessary clearance that we need, even from the security, National Security Advisor, and other agencies that we need to get their buy-in before going to town. So the concession period is for 15 years, and what government stands to benefit in terms of revenue within this concession period is well over 1.34 billion naira, after which the whole project will revert to the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And it's a way, like I said, complementing what the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy is also doing, so that we can reach the underserved and, of course, the rural communities in particular. So essentially, that's what the memo is all about, and we're happy to know that this memo scaled through and was approved by the Federal Executive Council. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon. Yeah, I presented a brief on the 2022 third quarter gross domestic product and other related performance indicators on the Nigerian economy. You recall the NBA's earlier released these numbers. The third quarter 2022 GDP revealed a positive performance of 2.25%, though lower when compared to the 4.03% in quarter 3 of 2021. This has been attributable to the base effect of the performance in 2020 during COVID. Specifically, on the broad sectorial performance, agriculture grew by 1.34% during the third quarter of 2022 in real terms. This is higher than the third quarter of 2021, which recorded 1.22%. Agriculture, industry, and services contributed 29.67%, 18.37% and 51.96%, respectively, to the third quarter GDP. This is in contrast, agriculture, industry, and services contributed 29.94%, 20.41%, and 49.65% respectively in the third quarter of 2021. This clearly shows a higher contribution of services in quarter 3 of 2021 compared to quarter 3 of 2022 compared to quarter 3 of 2021. But oil growth rate recorded minus 22.67% in real terms in the third quarter of 2022 compared to the minus 10.73% in the third quarter of 2021. And during this period, oil's contribution generally to GDP was 5.66%, which is a decline from the 7.49% contributed in quarter 3 of 2021. This poor performance was occasioned by a lower volume of production in the quarter under review compared to the corresponding quarter of 2021, the previous quarters. So non-oil sectors accounting for 94.34%, which is an increase from the 92.51% recorded in quarter 3 of 2021. The headline inflation rate maintained an upward trend in 2020, but slowed in April 2021, like we know, when 18.12% was recorded on a year-on-year basis. So the headline inflation currently stood at 21.09% in October 2022 year-on-year from 20.77% recorded in September. But on a month-on-month basis, headline inflation stood at 1.24% in October, lower compared to 1.36% in September, meaning that inflation declined marginally on a month-on-month basis. The rise in inflation is mainly due to high cost of production, imports, and food. But when we look at the core inflation is the one which excludes the prices of volatile agricultural produce. It stood at 17.76% in October, higher than the 17.6% recorded in September. But on a month-on-month basis, the core sub-index was 0.93% in October 2022, and a decline to 1.59% in September 2022. This means that core inflation decreased in October on a month-on-month basis. But the highest increases were recorded in prices of gas, liquid fuel, passenger transport by air, solid fuel, and vehicle spare parts. On the other hand, the food inflation rate rose to 23.72% in October 2022 compared to 23.34% in September. However, on a month-on-month basis, it stood at 1.23% in October from 1.43% in September, showing a fall. This decline was attributed to a reduction in prices of some food items like tubers, palm oil, maize, beans, and vegetables. Thank you.
On behalf of the Minister of Police Affairs, I want to report that Council considered and approved a private-public partnership arrangement whereby the police property in Maitama will be developed for the benefit of the senior officers of the police force. It's a PP arrangement between Cosgrove and the Ministry of Police Affairs / the Nigerian Police Force, whereby they will develop a parcel of their land and 39 apartments, very luxurious apartments, would be redeveloped, and 24 of them will be taken by the private sector that provided the funding, while the 15 will be used by the police over a period of time. But I think the beauty of the arrangement is that it has little or no cost to the federal government, because all we have offered is our land, and we've developed it, more units on the same property, and after the expiration of the lease agreement, the entire 39 buildings reverts to the Nigerian Police Force. And even while the arrangement is on, the police is entitled to 1.5% of whatever rent is collected, from the 24 apartments which the private sector, is taking of the agreement. Thank you very much.
Whether the use of mother tongue is exclusive, it is, in the sense that the policy states the first 6 years of primary school should be in the mother tongue. And the second part of his question, he asked whether somebody who migrates to a place that he is not born in, which speaks a language that he does not speak, will he be forced to learn the language of the community? The policy says the language of the immediate community. Suppose there is a very large concentration of people, but they speak a different, so many languages. The language that will be chosen is the language that the community communicates in. But other Nigerian languages, the policy encourages their teaching and their learning. And in addition, of course, the learning of international languages as subjects will continue. For instance, in primary 1 or 2, you will be learning in your mother tongue, but you will still be learning English, French, Arabic, or whichever international language you choose. And then there will be a Nigerian language that will be taught. And then instruction will be, because we have 625 languages at the last count, and before, in the absence of policy, but still there was policy, because something had to be done about languages. Encouragement was given to 3 or 4 or 5 Nigerian languages before. But now, the objective of this policy is to promote and enhance the cultivation and use of all Nigerian languages. According to the policy, all languages are equal, and they will get equal treatment. But certainly, some languages are spoken by a very large number of people. So when it comes to the choice of mother tongue, it is the mother tongue, the tongue that is spoken in the community. And penalties? Of course, if there's a government, what do you mean by penalty? How can you refuse one? You mean in the private school or what? Because once it is government policy, it has to be done. But I'm coming to a question that will probably answer, the one asked by the vanguard person, whether it is fully operational. Theoretically, this policy starts from today. But certainly, we don't have teachers. Suppose now, we go to, is it Bendel or Delta, and say, okay, from today you start in Ishikiri. But probably we can get 2 or 5 Ishikiri lecturers. But perhaps we need 100. So before it becomes fully operational, government has to get teachers, the supply of teachers, and then we develop instructional materials. As I was saying in council, probably now we don't have, let's say, a Tiv grammar, or Yoruba syntax, or Igbo phonology. All these have to be developed, even if it is at the lower level, before the language becomes operational, but it is operational from today. But of course, we have to develop the ability to apply it. Yes. Operational from today, I mean effective from today, okay. It is effective from today, but it will become operational when you have the instructional materials and you have the teachers to teach. All this will come out there is going to be an implementation and action plan coming for implementing the policy. And this will be addressed. Does that answer your question?
Now you're relegating official language, English?
No, we are not relegating it. We are just promoting our own indigenous languages. Because according to UNESCO, in the last few years, 29 languages in Nigeria became extinct. And even now, even in Bauchi, I believe there is a language that is spoken by less than 10 people. Since their children are not learning, I believe in the next 20 years, that language will disappear. And once you lose a language, you are losing more than a language. You are losing a whole mindset, a whole world view, a culture, and then a cultural heritage that developed in that, and then even the way of looking at things, and the wisdom. Every language has instinctive wisdom inside it. And once it dies, you lose that. And we are the worst for it. Madam, I don't know that I have answered her question. No, it will be compulsory all over the country. This policy is for Nigeria. Yes. Madam, primary 1 to primary 6 instructions will be in indigenous language. That is in the language of the community. Let's say in Lagos, it will be in Yoruba. And then from junior secondary school, you continue using English along with the native tongue. This is just to develop, promote, protect our languages.
Probably if I can just bring some clarity. What we are saying is that as of today, English is the medium of instruction in our primary schools.
No, languages.
Sir?
Primary 1 to 6.
Yeah, I'm saying, no, I say as of today.
Oh, yes.
So as of today, English is the medium of instruction in our primary schools. With this new policy, your mother tongue will be the medium of instruction in primary school. In other words, your arithmetic, your mathematics, your nature study will be taught in your mother tongue, including your English language. I mean, we went to school a long time ago, and I remember that our mother tongue was the medium of instruction. And it has been proven scientifically that children do better when issues are explained to them in their mother tongue than in another language. Because when they leave school, they go back to their grandmothers, they go back to their mothers, and they don't speak English. So this is going to not only add value to our culture, but also it will improve the learning prowess of the average child. It has been proven scientifically. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Somebody asked about whether the president will do some clemency. The law is the law, and clemency is something optional. In 2020, you said he decided to do. Well, that is his decision. But he hasn't told me that he's going to be clement this time. And as Minister of Education, my duty is to state the position of government, and I've stated it several times. Are you a lecturer?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. A A question was raised as to what my opinion or advice is to the Inspector General of Police in view of the judgment that was said to have been delivered or handed down by a court as it relates to contempt. My response by way of reaction is simple. As the Chief Law Officer of the Federation, my opinion is rooted on 3 grounds majorly. 1, facts. 2, evidence. 3, law. And I look at the 3 to arrive at an opinion. I'm sorry to state that the judgment in contention has not been delivered to my office officially or unofficially. And the facts, evidence, and indeed law on the basis of which I can form any opinion as it relates to an advice to be given to the IG have not been presented for my consideration, and I have not formed any opinion yet. I will await official request, look into the facts, look into the evidence, and the application of the law. I cannot be preemptive. On the issue of Denmark piracy case relating to a Nigerian, a question was asked as to whether the federal government is considering any extradition. Let me state clearly that the extradition as an issue is a function of law, a function of request, and indeed not a suo motu affair. The fact that a Nigerian is involved in, or perhaps has been convicted in one country or the other, does not in its own right provoke the interest of Nigeria to place a request for extradition. It is indeed on the basis of the law. And where an offense is committed elsewhere, you have to bear your cross in terms of ensuring that the law of the country where you indeed operated in breach comes to bear on you. So the idea of extradition is not in any way rooted, grounded, or connected with being a Nigerian who has committed an offense in a foreign land. So how does the issue of extradition comes into play? For example, if that Nigerian is already perhaps maybe standing trial in the Nigerian state before perhaps he now absconded to a different country and committed an offense there, Nigeria may consider, in view of the fact that he is standing trial, that he should be extradited back to Nigeria to stand trial for what he has committed. But even at that, if he has indeed committed an offense in Denmark and is convicted, the idea of now perhaps bringing him back to Nigeria without allowing him to now serve the prison term, if indeed any has been passed, does not arise. So I'm sorry to say that the Nigerian that has committed an offense in Denmark will remain there to now serve his prison term. Perhaps maybe if there exists an understanding, international understanding by way of an agreement between Nigeria and Denmark as to the exchange of prisoner, that possibility could be there. But as it is now, in the absence of one, he will serve his prison term there, and then perhaps maybe we will consider, if the need arises thereafter, what needs to be done in the Nigerian situation, taking into consideration that he has gone out of Nigeria to commit an offense. Thank you.
The question was, what's the Minister of Finance and I doing with regards to hardship in Nigeria, right? Okay, so the suggestion is that both of us are the ones creating the hardship, and it has to take two of us to resolve it. In the first place, I just returned this morning from Brussels, where 106 countries met. These are 27 countries from Europe and 79 countries from the Organization of African, Caribbean, Pacific countries. And what was the deliberation on? Basically on hardship the world over, things to do around food and energy crisis. I think that it's always good for us to put things in their right perspective. And like I say to people, when you say government, we should be able to specify which government we are talking about. Is it a federal government? Is it a state government? Or is it the local government? Because we all have our different responsibilities. And it is for this reason that we last year started some work on the multidimensional poverty index, for which we recently released the report and was launched by Mr. President. You see, in the past, we've always looked at monetary poverty. But poverty, like we know, has different phases, different intensity, and different causes. And it is for this reason that we went around the 109 senatorial districts in Nigeria to carry out those surveys and to be able to say specifically where this hardship is. The results clearly show that poverty, at least 72% of poverty is in the rural areas. It also shows clearly that Sokoto State is leading in poverty with 91%. But the surprising thing is Bayelsa being the second in terms of poverty rating in the country. So you see, the issue is not about availability of money, but it has to do with the application of money. In the course of working on the National Development Plan, we looked at previous plans and say, why didn't they do as much as was expected? We also looked at the issues of the National Social Investment Program of government. Government is putting out, at the federal level, putting out so much money, but we are not seeing a reflection, so much reflection in terms of money that is being put out in alleviating poverty, which is one of the reasons the government also put in place the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy. But if the government, federal government, puts the entire income that it earns into all of this without some form of complementarity from the state governments in playing their part, it will seem as if we are throwing money in a pond. Because the governors basically are only functioning in their state capitals. And democracy that we preach about is delivering the greatest good to the greatest number of people. And from our demography, it shows that the greatest number of our people live in the rural areas. But the governors are not working in the rural areas. Right now, 70% of our people live in the rural areas. They produce 90% of what we eat. And unfortunately, 60% of what they produce is lost due to post-harvest losses. It does not get to the market. When we talk about food prices, like I mentioned right now, as driving inflation, prices of food at the farm gates are low. But when you now take it to the urban areas, you find that the prices are high due to supply chain disruptions, lack of infrastructure to take them there. I think on the federal government side, we are doing our best, but we need to push that rather than governors continue to compete to take loans to build airports that are not necessary, where they have other airports so close to them, or governors now competing to build flyovers all over the place, and we applaud them. They should concentrate on building rural roads so that the farmer can at least get their product to the market. And you find that if they do that, and with the new policy in the National Development Plan that talks about taking power to the rural areas, especially off-grid power that can easily be put there, you begin to attract industries to those areas for value addition. UNIDO report shows that in terms of employment, the MSMEs employ 70% of our people. So you can imagine how much progress we will make when you find that there are roads, there is power in these rural areas. And in terms of agri, federal government doesn't have a land that they would plant. Government has pushed for the Anchor Borrowers program. And that is going on very well. But the states control land. The states are the ones to provide land for agriculture. They are not investing in that. They would rather build skyscrapers in a city where people will see and clap, but the skyscrapers will not put food on the table. Like I always say, if you look at the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he says you have to take care of the basic needs of individuals first before you begin to talk about self-actualization. So we need to take care of the issues of food, nutrition, housing, and clothing for our people before we begin to think of how to go to the moon and begin to build flyovers and airports in the state capital. That is the missing link, which we need to push so that we will be able to catalyze growth. But continuing to say federal government or my sister Zainab and I, what are we doing? We are doing our part, and I'm sure Wike told you guys about monies that we released, over 500 billion to the oil-producing states, and I've seen some disclaimers from the states saying the small money they are getting on a monthly basis, and some are giving some half-truths of what they have received. We need to hold them accountable so that together we all can grow our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely day. Yes?
It's not an excuse, but information is a key and a fundamental defense. Thank you.